The rain in Sector G didn't fall. It fizzled. Each drop was a tiny burst of corrupted data. A line of garbled code that hit the corroded metal walkways of the rust pits with a faint sizzle, leaving behind a pixelated shimmer that would fade in. A few seconds. For most, this datafall was a nuisance. A low-level environmental hazard that could corrupt unshielded electronics and cause mild skin irritations. For Kael, it was a resource. He held out a battered data slate, its screen flickering as it parsed the falling code. Most of it was junk, remnants of a weather control system that had collapsed centuries ago. But every so often, a clean, uncorrupted string would fall. You watched the lines scroll by. NV_cond. Precipitation_mild_0.7. Error. Null_ref_texture. Audio_asset. Rain_on_metal_loop.wav. All useless. Kael was looking for something specific, something with a bit of function left. In it, a sharp ping from the slate made him look up. A single, bright green line of code glowed amidst the digital chaff. Skill_fragment. Minor_grip_enhancement_0.1%. It wasn't much, but it was something. With practice motions, Kael isolated the string, his fingers dancing across the cracked screen. He dragged it into his own system, interface a chaotic, jury-rigged mess of salvaged code and personal patches he called the Scrapheap. A confirmation window popped up, its text flickering between 3 different languages. Install new code fragment. Warning, unverified source. Potential for system instability, 0.82%. Kael snorted. 0.82% was practically a guarantee of stability. In his world, he tapped confirm. A faint warm tingle ran down his arms to his fingertips. He flexed his hands. The worn leather of his gloves felt a little stickier, his grip on the data slate a fraction more secure. It was a pathetic upgrade, the kind of bonus a level 1 adventurer would have gotten from a pair of cheap starting gauntlets back in the age of integration. For Kael, a scavenger living in the ruins of that age, it was a hard-won victory. The system had been meant to be a gift, a benevolent, godlike AI that would integrate itself with the world, turning life into a grand, adventurous game. It promised quests, classes, skills, and a clear path of progression for everyone. The integration, however, had failed catastrophically. The system shattered, its core logic corrupted. Instead of a seamless game, it left behind a broken, glitching reality. Zones of unstable code bled into the real world. Monsters spawned from corrupted data streams. The system's intended mechanics became a source of terror and opportunity. Kael was born into this chaos. He had no class, no predefined path. He was a scavenger. He survived by plumbing the depths of the system's wreckage, harvesting the fragments of its broken code and stitching them into his own being. Every skill he had was stolen, every stat point a trophy from a battle against reality itself. His current home was the Rust Pits, a sprawling, multi-leveled shantytown built from the wreckage of a colossal factory complex. It was a place of scavengers, mechanics, and data brokers, all living under the shadow of the chime, a massive, crystalline system conduit that hung from the sky, cracked and leaking raw data into the atmosphere. The chime was what made the Rust Pit so dangerous and so lucrative. He navigated the treacherous walkways, his newly enhanced grip giving him a bit more confidence on the slick metal. His destination was the glitch market, the chaotic heart of the Rust Pits, where scavengers came to trade their findings. He had something more valuable than a minor grip enhancement to sell. The glitch market was a sensory assault. The air hummed with the sound of failing electronics and barkers hawking their wares. Stalls were lit by flickering holograms and salvaged glorbs. A man with a pixelated face was selling potions of minor healing that occasionally turned the user's skin blue for an hour. A woman with a robotic arm was trading glimmering swords of the Phoenix. Swords that were indeed glimmering, but had a nasty habit of randomly bursting into harmless yet distracting holographic flames. Kael ignored them. Heading for a secluded corner where the real brokers operated, he found his contact, A wizened old woman named Ilara, hunched over a workbench littered with dissected electronics. Left eye had been replaced with a mechanical lens that whirred as it focused on him. "Kael," she rasped, her voice a dry crackle. "You look like you've been chewing on static again. Find anything good?" Kael didn't waste time with pleasantries. He placed a small, heavily shielded data puck on her workbench. A full quest string. Unbroken. Lara's mechanical eye widened, its lens dilating. "No such thing," she scoffed, but her hands were already reaching for the puck. Unbroken quests were the holy grail for data brokers. Most quests left in the world were fragmented messes, their objectives unreadable, their rewards corrupted. A clean quest, even a simple one, was worth a fortune. She plugged the puck into her console. A hologram flickered to life above it, displaying the quest text in a crisp. It's an elegant font that was a jarring contrast to the surrounding decay. Quest accepted, the Lament of the Clockwork Princess objective. The princess of the Cogwork Citadel has been trapped by a temporal paradox. Her heart, the chronocore, has been shattered, its fragments scattered throughout the citadel. Retrieve the fragments and restore the chronocore to free her from the time loop. Reward, the king's gratitude. Title, Savior of the Cogwork Citadel. 5,000 gold sovereigns. Ilara stared at the text, her one good eye wide with disbelief. Cogwork Citadel. That's been a dead zone for 50 years. No one's gone in and come out. The quest string gives the entry key, Kael said flatly. A temporal resonance frequency. It should bypass the main paradox field at the gate. "And you're selling it?" Ilara asked, her eyes swiveling to him. "A quest like this, the reward." "The reward is a lie," Kael interrupted. "Look at the reward code." He pointed to a section of the hologram. To a normal person, it would look like gibberish. To a scavenger, it was a language. The string for the king's gratitude was linked to a null reference. The king no longer existed in the system's registry. The title was a dead-end command, and the gold sovereigns. That was the most dangerous part. The item ID for the gold was corrupted, pointing instead to an entity known as a greed elemental. A monster made of cursed, avaricious energy. Anyone who completed the quest and tried to claim the reward would be devoured. "It's a trap," Kael said. "It's a perfectly preserved, beautifully crafted trap." Ilara let out a long, slow whistle. A glitched quest was dangerous. A perfect quest that was secretly a death trap was a work of art. It was also incredibly valuable. To the right kind of buyer, someone who wanted to send a rival on a one-way trip, or a collector of the system's cruelest ironies. "I'll give you 300 creds and a stack of clean power cells," she offered. 500, and you throw in that particle weave cloak you've been hoarding, Kael countered. Her mechanical eye narrowed. They haggled for another 10 minutes, before settling on 450 creds, the cloak, and a set of military-grade data filters. It was a good deal. The cloak would help shield him from the data fall. The filters would make his scavenging more efficient. As he turned to leave, Ilara called out, "Kael, be careful with that Citadel key. Even if you're not going in, knowing the tune too, a monster's song is a dangerous thing." Kael just nodded, pulling his hood up as he stepped back into the fizzling rain. He had no intention of going anywhere near the Cogwork Citadel. It was a death trap, and he was a survivor. Life in the rust pits was a cycle of survival. Kael used his new filters to scavenge more efficiently, gathering enough raw data and system fragments to trade for food, water, and the occasional luxury, like a packet of pre-integration coffee. The particle weave cloak worked like a charm, its fibers humming faintly as they repelled the fizzling rain, leaving him dry and free from the low-level corruption that plagued most of the pit's inhabitants. He was comfortable, or as comfortable, as one could be in a world actively trying to glitch you out of existence. But the Cogwork Citadel, it lingered in his mind. The clean, unbroken quest string was an anomaly, a ghost of the system as it was meant to be. He found himself studying the temporal resonance frequency he had copied before selling the data puck. It was a complex melody of data pings and energy fluctuations, a key designed to unlock a very specific, very dangerous door. One night, As he was running a diagnostic on his Scrapheap interface, he picked up a signal. It was faint, almost lost. In the constant static of the chime, but it was there. It was a repeating broadcast, a whisper of code on a secure, high-level channel. Using his new filters, he managed to isolate and amplify it. It was a distress call. SOS. System integrity failure. Core loop unstable. Requesting immediate error. Request immediate. Debug. Protocol. Princess trapped. Signal was originating from deep within the Cogwork Citadel. Kael's first instinct was to delete it. It wasn't his problem. The Citadel was a tomb, but the signal was different. This wasn't part of the quest string. This was a system-level diagnostic. Alert, the kind an AI would send if a core part of its programming was critically failing, and it mentioned the princess. Curiosity was a dangerous trait for a scavenger. It led to poking things that shouldn't be poked, to walking into dead zones that had earned their name. Kael had survived this long by being cautious, by always weighing the risk against the reward. There was no reward here. It's only a ghost's cry from a digital graveyard. He spent the next 2 days trying to ignore it, focusing on his scavenging runs. But the signal was a splinter in his mind. He found himself running simulations, cross-referencing the distress call with the quest data. The quest was a trap, designed to lure someone into a fatal reward. But the distress call, it suggested, that the trap itself was a symptom of a deeper problem. The Citadel wasn't just a dead zone. It was a festering wound in the system. The princess, or whatever was left of her, was at its heart. The thought that finally broke his resolve was not one of heroism or greed. It was a scavenger's thought, a wound that deep, a system corruption. That's severe. It's a kind of code fragments one could find in a place. It's like that would be unlike anything else. Powerful, unique, game-changing. The risk was astronomical. But the potential reward? It wasn't the 5,000 glitched gold sovereigns. It was the chance to salvage a piece of the system's dying heart. He made his decision. He spent his remaining creds on supplies, high-grade energy packs for his multi-tool, shield emitters, and a handful of glitch grenades, unstable orbs of data that, when thrown, would overload a small area with chaotic code. Often crashing or confusing lesser digital entities, he stood before the rusted, monolithic gates of the Cogwork Citadel as the twin moons of the planet cast a sickly green and purple glow on the corroded metal. The air here was thick with a palpable wrongness, a temporal distortion that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. How time seemed to stutter, the fizzle of the data fall sometimes freezing for a microsecond before continuing. He pulled out his data slate and began to broadcast the temporal resonance frequency. It wasn't a sound, but a sequence of energy pulses that vibrated through the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan that sounded like a dying clock, the massive gears embedded in the gate began to turn. A narrow opening, just wide enough for a single person. Peered beyond it lay a courtyard of frozen clockwork soldiers, their brass bodies caught in mid-stride. A fountain in the center of the courtyard was a mess of stuttering, looping water, splashing and retracting in a 1-second loop. Kael took a deep breath, the particle weave cloak humming around him. He had just used the key to the monster's song. He was stepping into its cage. The inside of the Cogwork Citadel was a nightmare of temporal mechanics. Hallways stretched into impossible lengths before snapping back to their original size. Doors opened into rooms that existed 5 seconds in the past. The air was filled with the constant, maddening ticking of 1,000 unseen clocks, all falling in and out of sync. Kael's most valuable possession here wasn't his multi-tool, or his grenades. It was his Scrapheap. The mess of salvaged code that made up his personal system interface was inherently unstable, making it ironically resilient to the Citadel's temporal chaos. A clean, factory-standard system would have crashed instantly. Kael's Scrapheap just bent. He encountered his first enemy in the grand ballroom. It was a clockwork lancer, a tall, elegant automaton made of brass and steel, but its movements were a glitching horror. It would charge, then teleport back to its starting position. Its lance would thrust forward, then its attack animation would reset halfway through. Fighting it was like battling a corrupted video file. Kael couldn't rely on timing or patterns. He had to rely on instinct. He threw a glitch grenade. The orb detonated in a shower of chaotic code. The Lancer froze. Its internal chronometer overloaded. Stream of error messages poured from its optical sensors. Kael dispatched it with a precise plasma burst from his multi-tool, aimed at its exposed power core. As the Lancer collapsed, a shower of data erupted from its chassis. Kael's data slate pinged. Corrupted data packets scavenged. Lancer_charge_V 2.1. Warning. Code is 78% degraded. Contains multiple null references. This was the treasure he was looking for. He didn't dare install the full skill. It would probably make him charge through walls or into the floor. But he could break it down, scavenge its components. He spent a tense 10 minutes stripping the code, isolating a single, relatively stable subroutine, a tiny piece of the charge animation that governed foot placement, installed new code fragment, stable_footing_subroutine. Warning, unverified source, potential for system instability, 4.5%. Higher than he liked, but in this place, better footing was worth the risk, he confirmed. A jolt ran up his legs. He felt more planted, more solid, as if his boots were suddenly magnetized to the floor. The temporal stuttering of the citadel seemed to affect his balance less. It was a small edge, but it could mean the difference between life and death. He pushed deeper, following the fading distress signal. He fought through glitching automatons, navigated hallways that looped in on themselves, and solved puzzles that required him to think in 3 different timelines at once. With every enemy he defeated, he scavenged more code. He installed a fragment of a Sentinel's targeting system, giving him a HUD that occasionally highlighted enemy weak points. He salvaged a piece of a RepairBot's diagnostic code, allowing him to get a clearer picture of his own system's integrity. His Scrapheap grew, becoming more powerful, more complex. It's more unstable with every addition. Finally, he reached the throne room, the source of the distress signal. The room was a vast, circular chamber filled with the towering, silent machinery of a colossal clock. At the center, on a throne of gears and cogs, sat the Clockwork Princess. She was beautiful, a marvel of articulated porcelain and polished steel, but she was broken. Her body was trapped in a violent 1-second loop. She would stand, her face a mask of anguish, and then shatter into 1,000 pieces. A second later, the pieces would fly back together, reassembling her, and the cycle would repeat. It was an eternity of agony, a single horrifying moment stretched into infinity. Floating around her were 5 shimmering, crystalline objects, the fragments of the chronocore. The objective of the quest was clear, but Kael knew better. He scanned the core fragments. His data slate screamed a warning. Each fragment was a temporal bomb. The moment he tried to retrieve one, it would detonate, trapping him in his own personal time loop until his body's bioenergy gave out. The quest wasn't just a trap at the end. The entire objective was a trap. Kael circled the throne, his mind racing. The quest was a lie. The distress signal, however, was real. The system itself was crying out for help. He wasn't here to complete the quest. He was here to answer the SOS. He was here to perform a debug. The princess's shattering loop was the core of the problem. It was a feedback loop, a system error so profound it was causing the temporal instability throughout the citadel. The core fragments were a symptom, a defense mechanism thrown up by the broken system to prevent anyone from interfering with the loop. He couldn't touch the fragments. He had to fix the princess herself. He opened his Scrapheap interface, pushing its processors to their limit. He needed a direct connection to her code. He ran a diagnostic scan, using the salvaged RepairBot code. The results were a nightmare. Her core programming was a tangled mess of recursive errors. The command live was in direct conflict with a corrupted status effect, shattered_state. The system was trying to execute both commands at once, resulting in the endless loop of her breaking and reforming. He needed to interrupt the loop to insert a new command that could break the cycle. But her code was shielded, protected by the very temporal field that was tearing her apart. He couldn't get a clean signal in. He looked around the chamber, at the massive, silent clockwork machinery. This room wasn't just a throne room. It was a giant mechanical computer. The gears, the pendulums, the counterweights. They were all physical representations of the Citadel's core functions. And if they were part of the computer, maybe he could use them. He spotted a series of large brass levers near the base of the throne. They were disconnected, their linkages shattered, according to the schematics still faintly glowing on a nearby console. They were manual override switches for the main temporal regulator, a physical debug tool. The problem was, they were on the other side of a chasm that had opened in the floor, a rift in space-time that showed glimpses of other timelines, one where the Citadel was new and gleaming, another where it was an overgrown ruin. He couldn't jump the gap, but he had the code for it. He accessed the Lancer_Charge_V 2.1 data packet, the one he had scavenged from the first automaton. It was a movement skill, albeit a broken one. He had only installed a tiny, stable piece of it. Now he was going to install the whole corrupted mess. Install corrupted skill, Lancer_Charge_V 2.1. Warning: unverified source code is 78% degraded. Potential for system integrity failure, 89.4%, and almost 90% chance of catastrophic failure. His Scrapheap could be wiped clean, or his body could be teleported into a solid wall. He took a deep breath and hit confirm. Pain. His muscles screamed as the corrupted code forced itself into his system, his vision pixelated. Error messages flooded his HUD. A new skill appeared in his interface, its name a flickering mess of symbols. He focused his will on the levers across the chasm, activated the skill, and prayed. The world dissolved into a screeching tunnel of glitched light and sound. He was moving, but not through space. He was moving through the code itself. He saw the Citadel's architecture as wireframes, the princess as a vortex of conflicting commands. He shot forward, an arrow of pure data. He rematerialized on the other side of the chasm, stumbling to his knees, vomiting a thin stream of bile. His body felt like it had been turned inside out and reassembled in the wrong order. But he was alive. He was across. He staggered to the levers. They were heavy, frozen with age and disuse. He poured every ounce of his strength into them, his muscles screaming in protest. With a deafening crack, the first lever moved. A colossal gear above him groaned and shifted its position by a single tooth. He moved to the next lever and the next. Each one engaged another part of the giant clockwork computer, rerouting the flow of time, manually editing the code that was holding the princess captive. When he pulled the final lever, a deep, resonant chime echoed through the Citadel, the first clean, pure sound he had heard since he entered. In the center of the room, the princess's violent loop stuttered. She shattered one last time, but instead of reforming instantly, her pieces hung in the air, suspended in a moment of perfect stillness. The loop was broken. The 5 chronocore fragments, their defensive purpose now moot, began to drift towards the motionless porcelain shards of the princess. As they touched her, they dissolved into streams of pure golden data flowing into her, repairing her broken code. Kael watched, exhausted but triumphant, as the princess was reassembled. Not as a glitching automaton, but as she was meant to be. Her porcelain skin was flawless, her steel joints moved with silent grace. She stood from her throne, her optical sensors now glowing with a soft blue light, fixing on him. A new text box appeared in Kael's vision. It was not the glitched, treacherous quest reward. It was a system-level message. Core system loop princess _AI_ver 1.0 has been successfully debugged. System integrity for Sector G has increased by 12%. Reward granted for critical system maintenance. Choose one system _core_fragment. Before him, 5 options appeared, each one a piece of the Citadel's fundamental programming. Temporal _regulator_core. Granting the user minor control over personal time flow. Clockwork _animation_engine, allowing the user to animate and control inanimate objects. Predictive _algorithm_matrix, offering glimpses of an opponent's future actions. Structural_integrity_field, a powerful personal shield that repairs itself over time. Master_key_code, a piece of code that could bypass most low to mid-level system locks. This was the real reward. Not gold, not titles. It was pure, unadulterated, high-level code. A treasure beyond anything he could have imagined. Each choice was a path, a specialization that would redefine his abilities as a scavenger. He looked at the princess, who gave a slight, graceful bow. "Thank you, debugger," her voice chimed, a perfect, synthesized melody. "Hey, my king is long gone, his gratitude an echo in a dead program, but my own thanks are real. The citadel is now stable. You may leave in peace." The choice was difficult. The temporal regulator was tempting, as was the predictive matrix. But Kael was a scavenger. His life was about opening doors that were meant to stay shut. He chose the master_key_code. A warm, golden light enveloped him as the code integrated itself into his Scrapheap. It settled into his interface, a clean, elegant string of programming amidst the chaotic mess of his salvaged skills. He felt complete, more powerful, more capable. He gave the princess a nod of his own, a silent gesture of respect. He turned and walked out of the throne room, leaving the no-silent and stable citadel behind him. The hallways no longer looped, the doors opened into the correct moments in time. The monsters were gone, their corrupted data pacified by the restored system. Integrity. As he stepped out of the front gates and back into the fizzling rain of the rust pits, he looked back at the citadel. It was no longer a dead zone. It was a monument to the foolishness of the system's creators, and to the resilience of a single scavenger who dared to answer its dying plea. He was Kael, the System Scavenger, and in a world of broken code and dying light, he had just salvaged hope. He had no class, no destiny, but he had the key, and in this broken world, that was more than enough.